Thank you so much. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros esta tarde. In September, we have dedicated our this month to the cultural heritage of Peru from different perspectives, not only in archaeology, which is the subject of the lecture tonight, but also literature for adults and also for the children, which is very important. For this cultural program of Peru this September, we had the support of the Peruvian Embassy in London, and I would like first of all to thank the cultural attaché Ricardo Malca from the Embassy of Peru for his great support and the ideas he has also brought, which had made it possible to organize. As I said, tonight we are visualizing Inca Cusco, a project, a lecture on which José Alejandro Beltrán Caballero will show us some of the research he had made about Peru and his Cusco, his richness, the culture, the architecture, the Andean studies, and also the archaeological sites. This research made by José Alejandro Beltrán Caballero is part of a global project under the direction of Dr. Ricardo Mar in the Seminar of Asian Topography of the University of Rovira Virgili in Tarragona in Spain, and it was initiated in 2010. One of the main objectives of this project has been the reconstruction of the ceremonial center of the ancient capital of Tawantinsuyu, and are those tasks made difficult in the first place by the colonial and republican construction that today cover the remains of the ancient city. It is necessary to assume the current circumstances that condition this work and to make an effort to extract the maximum yield from the archaeological and historical resources available. After all, the objective of reinterpreting the Inca city is part of a long tradition of Andean studies from inside and also outside Peru. It is evident that in the state of conservation of buildings of the ancient capital were similar to that of Machu Picchu, we will not be discussing the limits and possibilities of this virtual reconstruction. However, it's precisely the continuity of the urban fabric of the city and its cultural vitality that justify the proclamation of the contemporary Cusco as the archaeological capital of South America. Some of the most significant elements of the city's past are still part in its present: water, roads, terraces, and settlements of the ancient capital, Tawantinsuyu. The project we are presenting tonight has been possible with the sponsorship of the National Museum of the American Indian Smithsonian Institution in Washington, the Tinker Fellowship of the Stanford University, the Agencia Española de Cooperación Internacional para el Desarrollo, and has been part of meetings in publications in Spain, Italy, USA, United States, Peru, and Colombia. And let me now to introduce our guest, is Dr. José Alejandro Beltrán Caballero, who is an architect, PhD in architecture in the Universidad Politécnica de Catalunya, associate research in the Seminar of Ancient Topography, and lecturer at the Universidad Rovira y Virgilia in Tarragona. As part of his research field, ancient settlements concerning water management and landscape interpretation, Dr. Beltrán Caballero was visiting scholar in Stanford University, has lectured in Spain, Italy, United States, Colombia, and Peru, and has also collaborated on projects for the virtual reconstruction of archaeological sites in Europe, Tarragona and Rome, and South America, Cusco. So thank you very much, Alejandro, for being there with us tonight. And let me inform you all that if you want to put some questions to our guest, you can do so in our chat, and we will be delighted to put him at the end of the talk. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you to the Instituto Cervantes for this kind invitation. A few months ago, I had the opportunity to show in this scenario the work we have done in Tarragona, in Spain. So this is why I want to propose you a kind of travel between the shores of the Mediterranean in Tarragona to the Andean mountain range. I'm going to share. I'm going to start with the presentation. Give me a second. Here. I start with this image because it shows what I'm trying to do this afternoon with this lecture. On your left, you have the reconstruction we have done of Tarragona, and on your right, you have the reconstruction we propose for the ceremonial center of Inca Cusco. So the strategy of the methodology we have used in the case of Tarragona, it's been the base we have used, or we have to propose what or how could look the ancient Cusco before the arrival of the Europeans. First of all, I want to put in the map where Cusco exactly is. Cusco is in the center, in the top of the Central Andes of Peru. Cusco is 3,600 meters up. And Cusco was the center of vast empire, the Inca Empire, or the Tawantinsuyu. Tawantinsuyu, that means Tawa is four and Suyu is part, so is the four parts empire. So Cusco was the center of this vast empire, an empire with a wide variety of natural environments, with a wide variety of peoples too, different kind of cultures, which the Inca put all together in this Tawantinsuyu empire. But this empire was linked by an amazing network of roads, which some scholars have measured in maybe 25,000 kilometers of length. This network of roads, in some cases, it's been put in parallel or in comparison with the Roman network of roads of the Roman Empire. This network of roads is still alive. It's still used by people all through the Andes. The first image we have is with those llamas in the Central Andes, but we have image like this one in the up in right in the Atacama Desert. But we have, for instance, these other structures of this bridge that is renewed every year, but is one of those bridges built and engineered by Inca people. You know, we have an amazing knowledge now about how Inca people was able to put all together those pieces. Because if you have an empire of that size, it's important you have a way to manage all the resources and people and force of labor that you need. And for instance, I just have one of those examples, is the quipus. This is the registry system, which helps to understand how Inca people was able to accomplish all those huge works I'm going to show you right now. This is an amazing example of these ways to keep the accountability of all the resources. But when we talk about Incas and when we talk about Cusco, sometimes it's very easily to think of of Machu Picchu. Maybe this is one of the iconic images we have of it. And Machu Picchu, one of those iconic places around the world, like Taj Mahal or the I don't know, the Eiffel Tower or the Big Ben Tower. You know, those places that is maybe in all the imaginary of people, and maybe in the list we have of places we need to visit as a priority. So I start with this image of Machu Picchu because in the introduction we were saying that if the remains of the city of Cusco were in this state of conservation, maybe we're not talking about the possibilities of the reconstruction of Cusco, because if you see here, you can notice more or less in a very clear manner with the buildings. You know, you can see perfectly the terraces, the walls. Here you have all those amazing buildings of Machu Picchu, the plazas. You have maybe all the elements very clear here. So I want you to keep this in mind because it's going to be very interesting to compare what is the situation now in Cusco in relationship with Machu Picchu. Here you have this amazing set of terraces, or for instance, this very good example of the technique of carving and working the stone, a millennial tradition in the Andes. When we take some distance from the site, we realize that it's huge, that is an amazing place, and that's something that makes interesting or captivating about the Inca architecture is how this architecture becomes part of the landscape. It's just like they have carved the hills to produce this architecture. I'm going to show you, and we go further, we can see that we have a complete image of this work in Machu Picchu. But if we go to other places, I'm going to show you those are the great systems of terraces of the Sacred Valley, very near from Cusco. And this, for instance, is the valley of the Urubamba River or the Vilcanota River. If you notice, you have here this wave, the wave here, those are walls built in Inca times. If you can see the length of those kilometers of walls that were built to be in a relationship with the flooding of the rivers. Here you have it, we go in the direction to Machu Picchu, to this Urubamba River. You have other place that is called Ollantaytambo. Here you have, I don't know if you can see my point here. I hope, because I'm showing some things here. You have
yes,
okay.
we can see.
Okay, thank you. You have here the ceremonial center of Ollantaytambo. Here you have the settlement of Ollantaytambo and all the Inca terraces that still are in use. Because something that is really amazing in Inca culture and in Inca culture in our days is that the water system, channels or fountains or reservoirs, terraces, field crops, and other things related with agriculture are still in use by contemporary people of in this case of Ollantaytambo. Here you have the terraces. Here you have more terraces in this place. All around you can see Inca terraces and how they have managed all the topography to create those crop fields. This is another spectacular example. This is Pisac, the agrarian terraces of Pisac. Chinchero, all those places are real around the Cusco. This is Uchuicosco. Here you can see the height of these terraces. In this case, these terraces have more or less 6-7 meters up. And this is Tipon, other great place. And if you notice, you have the same elements. You have terraces, you have channels, you have the same walls, you have more or less the same, but depending on the place, Inca people are building those settlements. The configuration of this set changes completely. But we're going to talk about Cusco, and this is more or less what you see today if you go to Cusco, a colonial city, an amazing colonial city because it's beautiful. They have an incredible colonial times heritage. And below this colonial heritage, we need to find the Inca remains of the Inca city. Of course, if we are going to follow this path of trying to understand how the Inca Cusco was 500 years ago, we need to study ancient city, not just from the archaeological remains we can find today, but for the great work a lot of scholars have done during the last 1,050 years, more or less. Here I have some examples of this work, put in maps, in documents. I have the first one on the left is one map that was done by a traveler called George Esquire by the middle of the 19th century. And the second on your right is Max Uhle, is a German archaeologist. And in those maps, we have a very important information about the Inca city. They were studying the Inca city from the study they were doing of the city they saw at that time. Of course, there are Peruvian people, very important people who have studied the city too, contemporary people from the United States, from Peru, from different parts of the globe that have a continuous study, not just the architecture, but the sociology and anthropology of the Inca Cusco. Those are contemporary works about the remains of the Inca Cusco in the city, surveys done by, in this case, by a Peruvian engineer, Santiago Agurto, which help us really, really a lot because they go house by house trying to find the archaeological remains of Inca times in every and each house of Cusco. This is an Agurto drawing of the terraces. And I think here you can notice that we are talking more or less the same thing we were seeing in the Sacred Valley with those terraces we saw in those examples, because the technique is more or less the same. Those are orthogonal terraces that are trying to carve or to model the topography. As I was saying before, this is Cusco. This is the Plaza de Armas, or the main square of Cusco today. But in Inca times was an esplanade where all the main events of the empire were taking place. So if you walk through the streets of Cusco, you will see this. You will see colonial and republican buildings built over the Inca terraces, because those walls you see here are the retaining walls of the Inca terraces. Of course, if you see those stairs, the material and maybe in some cases the configuration has changed from Inca time. But even though you can see how could look an Inca street right now. Here in this image, you have those retaining walls of those terraces, which were covered by structures of colonial or republican times. So, and this is a good, very example too of this system, because what I'm trying to do, showing you the images before Machu Picchu and other places, is that you can see, for instance, that terrace or that retaining wall in Cuzco with those 7 meters high, is that you can try to see in those pictures, even we have a lot of things up or above those terraces, you can identify these terraces here are Inca terraces. But if you go inside some buildings, you can see these amazing walls too. When I was talking in Machu Picchu, when I showed you that fountain with that beautiful carved stone, it's the same technique they use here for move a ton of weight stone, carve it and put all together in this kind of joint that is impossible to even put inside a needle or a knife. It's impossible because it's very, very perfectly ensembled. This wall is the same wall in other place, and it's connected with this stair here, and it's connected with this wall here. But right now what we have is a kind of puzzle. We have different parts of the city, of the Inca city, that are covered or hide or inside the buildings today. This is why we need to produce these maps. It's the only way we can put all together, following the tradition of all those scholars I showed you before. And this is the way we are trying to understand or to try to put together all the pieces of the puzzle. The wall we were seeing is this wall here, and the stair I showed you is this point here. So this stair is this stair here. I'm going to show you a little bit more the construction of this side of the city. But what I want you to know about what I'm talking about is that I'm talking about the ceremonial center of Cusco, because Cusco was a big settlement, and one of the parts of the principal part of this city was this ceremonial center. I'm going to show you at the end of this talk video we have produced of the reconstruction of this, and someone wrote in the comments, you are telling us this is Cusco, but this is not Cusco. Cusco was huge, and I have to clarify, yes, you're completely right. This is not Cusco. This is the ceremonial center of Cusco. So thank you for the precision. And I'm going to talk about this right now, the center, the ceremonial center of Cusco City that was between the Sapi River and the Tuyumayu Choquechaca River, this river here. This is what I'm going to talk right now. I'm going to talk about the rest of the city too, but in this moment, I'm going to focus on this. And if we talk about those remains, those archaeological remains, those walls we were seeing in this place, this is connected with all those, I think, places or things that are iconic in Cusco. I think maybe you have heard talking about the 12-angle stone, because it's a stone that is, I think I don't have it here, but it's a stone that have 12 angles in which, I think it's this one, if I'm not wrong, this is completely ensembled, one stone with the other. So this is the Palacio de Inca Roca, a huge platform in Inca times that was a ceremonial platform. And this is what we have. We have the contemporary building here, or what this is, sorry, this is not a contemporary building. This is a colonial time building, but this is what we have right now. And from the study of this platform, for instance, we are proposing what was the shape of this platform in Inca time. So it was a platform that has maybe an ushnu that was a kind of pyramid, a ceremonial pyramid, and a building in this part of the platform. How do we know that? Because we have this building, we have those stones with a different configuration, with a different stone. So this is how we arrive to this hypothesis about the reconstruction of this site. If we continue, there is something interesting is that when they built that building I showed you before, is because the difference in the topography or the height of this part and this part is a lot. It could be maybe 10 or 12 meters. So they need a huge wall to retain all these terrace up here. That could be this wall, which ended in the ceremonial platform I showed you before. But of course, there are a lot of other instruments or tools we can use to find the puzzles of the pieces of this puzzle. And I'm talking about the excavations in the historic center. A lot of excavations, you can see, you know, I'm not archaeologist in profession, but I've been working with archaeologists for a long time. So now I feel archaeologists too. And we archaeologists love to find or to do this kind of work, because it's a kind of challenge to what I'm going, if what I'm going to find is going to be how I'm going to put, it's going to be a piece that I can put together with the other pieces. And this is what I'm trying to show you in these maps, those pieces that we try to put all together to arrive to a hypothesis how that city could look in Inca time. You know, more examples of excavations, how we put all this information together to analyze the different compounds and places and parts of this amazing city of Cusco. I'm going to show you, this is something I can just pass at this speed because it's really interesting. This is Cusco was formed by different compounds, different sets of buildings, and this is very interesting because it's the most this is the biggest in Cusco, was an administrative compound, and we still have 4 of the corners which of the corners of the wall which surround of this compound and are completely visible. And something I want to remark here is again the technique of the stone, because this is just like it looks like done by I don't know, by laser or I don't know what. And we have to keep in mind that they didn't have iron tools. They didn't have iron tools to produce this, but they have a millenary tradition of working the stone, of carving the stone. So this is why they could achieve this type of precision and beauty in the carving of the stone. Here I have another example. This is the same wall that is still now in food. Here I have those niches that are very characteristics of Inca architecture. Here we have, this is one of the last excavations have been done in the center, in the city center of Cusco, very near from the Plaza de Armas, or the main square of Cusco. And this is, I really like to show you this image because it shows the challenge of trying to understand an archaeological excavation. It's a mess of cables and tubes. The contemporary city are crossing all those networks of installations all around, but you have the power of the archaeological remains here. Those remains were found in this place. If you notice, this wall here is one of the sites of the channel built by the Incas. I'm going to show you some images a little bit further of the canalization of this river here. So here, this is another example how in this Plaza de Armas that we call today Plaza de Armas, before was the Aucaipata Esplanade, the Spanish used the Inca Walls when they built their own buildings. Here you can see how those walls were incorporated to the colonial time buildings. We continue with the puzzle, we continue putting all together the pieces. We have two archaeological parks in the center of Cusco. This is the Cusicancha Archaeological Park. We put all those spaces all together here in order to understand this compound or this set of buildings surrounding these patios. Other iconic image of Cusco is this one. This is the wall of the Temple of the Sun, of the Inca Temple of the Sun, the Coricancha, and the Church of Santo Domingo, built in the same place where the temple, where the Inca temple was set. So this is really interesting. And one of those streets, on one of the first images I showed you, the same retaining walls. In this case, the stairs have disappeared because in colonial times they needed to that kind of streets for the circulation of cars with wheels. You know, Incas, they didn't have wheels, so they didn't need this kind of streets. They better have the stairs. And here in red, I have for all of you a kind of conclusion of all that set of things we have talked about the ceremonial center of Cusco. This is the image of contemporary Cusco, and you see now we can identify those pieces of the Inca past of the city in the contemporary city today. But one other of the most interesting aspects of the settlement of how Inca people put all the pieces together to settle Cusco in this place is water management. Cusco was a lake, an ancient lake, that in some point the cap in this place called Angostura, or nearest, for saying in some way, erode, and all this water flowed away and remained those kind of wetlands or lagoons in the base of the valley of the Inca of the valley of Cusco. Cusco right now is here in this place, and this is more or less the natural situation Inca people found when they arrived to this valley. So this is the more or less configuration of the valley before Incas. The settlements archaeologists have found of other people before Incas. And here you have the strategy Inca people use. If I go back, you will see this wetland. You will see those rivers, kind of ravines, springs flowing down. But what Incas did was to rectify all those streams and take all to this artificial river that is now the Watanay River, and they took this river on the south side of the valley, so they could have all this land available for crops, for field crops. And this is very important because Cusco was, of course, part of that strategy. What I showed you before, the examples I showed you before, were done after the works I'm going to show you here in Cusco. So something that we are completely sure is that Cusco was the laboratory where all the experiments about big walls, retaining walls, channels, crop fields were done before taking that strategy to other parts of the Inca Empire. Those are channels in the Sacsayhuaman part of the city. This is a hill up Cusco, and you can see those are walls of Inca time. This is Sacsayhuaman. I'm going to talk about Sacsayhuaman a little bit later. Those are these rivers going inside the Cusco, the city of Cusco, and this is the course of those rivers when they go into the city. This is Sacsayhuaman, and these are the channels I showed you before in the photographs. And now you have, of course, those streets. It's not easy to identify the channels, but if you see through these, I forgot the name, I'm sorry, but I know you know what I mean. If you can see that is the technique and are the ancient canal walls of the Choquechaca River, for instance. Here you have one excavation that shows you other of those channels. This is the Choquechaca River a little bit south, and this is the big channel they built to gather all the waters together. You can see this is an artificial course of the river, and here is much more clear to see because you can see this hill was cut to let the river pass. So it only is understandable as a human work. So this is the river Inca people built to put all the waters together and take it out of the valley. And I was talking Sacsayhuaman. Sacsayhuaman is other iconic place in Cusco. And what is so iconic? Because it has this great set of walls with huge stones. Here I have some. I'm going to show you the configuration, the general configuration of the compound, and I'm going to show you how we have worked to understand this place, to build a virtual hypothesis how this set of buildings could be in Inca time. There is something interesting in Inca tradition, and is the value, all the manifestations of the nature have the value of the manifestation of the nature have for Inca people. For instance, rocks are very important because rocks were the ancestors were their ancestors. So rocks were very important in the configuration of any built place. Here you have some rocks, and we can see how those rocks are part of the buildings. We have produced those images to understand how those buildings were configured around those rocks. Here I have this. And Sacsayhuaman was very important because it was called another temple of the sun. They have the high temple of the sun, that is Sacsayhuaman, and the low temple of the sun, that was the Coricancha, where the Spanish built the Santo Domingo church. So in Inca culture, the duality is another important aspect of the life. So Sacsayhuaman was very important because of that, because it was the siege of the temple of the sun and was the siege of the power too, because it was not just the religious part of Incas, but the political and economical part of the Incas too. That was said. That was siege in Sacsayhuaman. You can see this is what we have of Sacsayhuaman today. Just the foundations of the buildings, but we have trying to understand how the hydraulic system works, how the building system works, how they could configure these buildings. There are some interesting pieces. I'll show you those two pieces of those are body pieces found in tombs. And if you notice, you have three sets of walls that reminds of those three sets of walls of Sacsayhuaman. And here you have three towers that the Spanish people in the chronicles talk about, the three towers, los tres torreones. So those images, those little pieces, because if you maybe are this size of these votive pieces, you can see that there are kind of they remind in some way the configuration of Sacsayhuaman at Inca time. So this is the work we have done. This is we have a start from the state of how the state of the archaeological remains right now, and we are beginning to put all the pieces together to take the walls up and try to understand how the configuration of these buildings were. But we have another, we have worked with another, with many sources, and one of those sources is this painting. This painting was at the Cusco Cathedral, and it's called El Milagro del Santorusi, something like the miracle of the Santorusi. Santorusi was a very special place in ancient Inca Cusco, and it talks about a fight between Spaniards and Inca people, and it appears the Virgin and helps to the Spanish people. But what is interesting about this painting is something that you can see here, this corner in the left top of the painting. You can see this torreon, we can call it, this tower with three can you see steps. And this is what we have used to propose the shape of that torreon, the circular, the round tower of Sacsayhuaman. Of course, we have used the contemporary because I think new technologies is not much new anymore. So the contemporary technologies of gathering data and produce 3D models. Of course, drones have been really helpful in this task. We have used them, for instance, in this place. We were talking about Sacsayhuaman here, but this is Sechuna, is other place in the same compound of Sacsayhuaman, the same archaeological park. And we have used these drones because they have helped us to have the complete model of this place. And on the video I'm going to show you later, you will see how we have used this model and how we have used the plans we do and the same strategy to understand how this place could work in Inca time. This is a reservoir related with all this management of water in Inca time. There is from the ortho map produced from the work of the drone, we have had the chance to produce these maps here, and I'm going to show you a little bit later the result. So this is what we have here, the ceremonial center of Cusco, those two important parts, Sacsayhuaman and this zone between the Choqquechak River and the Sapi River. We have the duality I was talking about. We have the Han and Cusco, or the high part of the city, and the Urin Cusco, the low part of the city. We have the different elements which were part of this Inca place. Here you have how we have understood what is our purpose about how the Inca city work in this place specifically, the roads, the links between the plazas or the plazas like this one, Aucaipata, Inti Pampa. You know, here you have the Temple of the Sun, that curved wall with the Catholic Church at the same place. The platform I talked before, this big compound. You have now all the elements put all together to try to understand how Inca people put all those pieces and did the ceremonial center. If we go outside the ceremonial center, we still can see in the city of Cusco the remains of Inca Walls. This is, to me, this is fascinating because you can see the contemporary stair, but you can see the Inca stair here, because this was a very important road of the Inca road that now is transformed in a road of the city. This is here up, but if you go down, you can see here you will see that this road is on another terrace, Inca terrace in Cusco. So this is why Cusco is so interesting, because you can see all these pieces all around. This is other good example. I was talking about the rocks, how the rocks have that key role in the religiosity, but in the configuration of the urban space. This is a rock that was built all around in Inca times, but was destroyed in colonial times. And this picture is from 70 years ago, before all this expansion of the city. So the good thing about those photographs is that help us to understand much better that Inca city before the cover of the contemporary city. The rock I was talking to you about before is here in this place. And if you can, I think it's clear, you can notice here the kind of prints of these Inca walls here that have, of course, disappeared, but you can still intuit a little bit of those walls. What we have done is to draw over this photograph and put all the system together. This is the ceremonial center I was talking before, and all the system goes further that ceremonial center. If we continue, this beautiful colonial city hides all those pieces of terraces of Inca time. Here you have the terraces. Here you have our director, and inside the buildings, the same situation we have in the ceremonial center in the center of Cusco. We have in San Blas. This is the San Blas district, and we have the same. This is a hostel, and inside this hostel, you can see here the beds. You have those stones of Inca time too. If we continue with this strategy of trying to find the pieces and try to see how, and this is the contemporary city. This is before, and this is what we can get from that, the information we get from those photographs. Ceremonial centers that now continue being ceremonial. That is amazing. Those are coca leaves those are offerings people bring to these huacas. That is the name of those rocks, those carved rocks. Those are the huacas, and still in the religiosity of people of Cusco today, it still remains this religiosity with those offerings. If we leave that part up of the valley, we go to this part of it. If you remember, I was talking to you that the river was put on the south side of the valley, so this side was cleared for field crops. I'm going to show you how the strategy first work with the water, set all the walls, the retaining walls of those terraces, some of the walls I showed you before, manage the water for draining, for putting water in the crop fields, link them with the roads, and this is what we have at the end: a huge set of structures of Inca time. This is the main tool we have used to accomplish our task of understanding how Inca people transformed the complete valley with settlements, with terraces, walls, those channels and roads. And this is the complete image from the ceremonial center to all outside the valley. So a general image, a close relationship between the agricultural part and the settlements and the location of the ceremonial center here. And here you have more or less a condensation of all what I have said before, and the strategy how Inca people built the ceremonial center, and by extension, the rest of the valley and the other works we have seen at the beginning of this talk. Here is written: Cusco today keeps the keys of its planning. You see this, you see, well, where are those keys to understand this planning? First of all, the hydraulic system, I was talking to you. The second was how they managed to to change the topography. We parting from these retaining walls. If we come closer, you see this. This is the high part I was talking to you. The walls, those amazing walls we saw in the images are here, and the platform here with those rocks as part of the strategy of the change of this topography. Of course, the roads that were roads with ancient roads before the Incas. The open spaces, in this case, Aucalpata, Intipampa, Rimacpampa, as places which were important for the religiosity and for the different events of the city. The link between the high part and the low part of the city with the temple of the son of Han and the temple of the son of Urim. And this is the image we have produced of how this city could be in Inca time. So when we arrive here, I want you to think about what we saw in Machu Picchu. What we saw in Machu Picchu was a compound of different elements treated in a specific way, and this is what happens here in Cusco. Those are some of the images we have produced of it. with Saizahuaman and the rest of the city. Those are the terraces of San Blas. They show you the hostel. First, maybe one of those. I could say maybe these walls here are the wall we saw in that hostel before. The rivers, the channels of those rivers. The big compound I show you two. I talked about before. The ceremonial platform here. But we will see this on the video. Okay, so let's go to the video. Okay, so well, this is the image I left you with before. I was talking that it's a complete interdisciplinary with a lot of sponsors. And this is the general image we have produced for this part of the city. We are still working in the rest. Here we have some of the lines of the walls I showed you before, but we in the stage of the research we are right now, we have produced the model for Saizahuaman and the ceremonial center of the city and the terraces of San Blas and San Pedro here. When I was talking about the drone and how we have make it work to our research, I was talking about this place here, Sechuna. And the images you saw before, you saw the result of the work of the drone, the topography, but here you have the complete reconstruction we propose for this part of Saizahuaman, a huge reservoir that was, the purpose was for ceremonial services, and all those constructions, which in some cases, I thought take us to little cosmos, like I'm going to stop in this part, because this image here is an amazing example of how they bring to this ceremonial and sacred place images like the Titicaca Lake. Those are stones that are that looks like that look like islands in this little pond here. You can see fountains and how rocks were carved to take the water to those fountains, how the buildings are assembled to arrive to this compound. This is Saizahuaman, the three sets of walls, rocks. You can identify here the rocks too, the three towers, called the three towers, but we have to understand that how or what could mean a tower in the 15th century from the speaking of the conquerors. Those are the San Blas terraces. Sabantiana, this other waka or sacred rock. Here, the Inca Roca platform. Here is the Coricancha, or the Temple of the Sun. Here's all the neighbor of the sun, yes, it's a neighbor of the sun. Yes, maybe the translation is not correct, but that's the idea. Those are the sacred gardens of the Temple of the Sun. This is the wall we saw in the photographs with the church here. Those are terraces that now are completely covered by colonial and republican buildings. Here is where the Cathedral of Cusco is. That was the Viracocha temple. Aucaipata and Cusipata explained. And here you have the complete image of this ceremonial center and all the rest of things. The model, the 3D model you have seen before was part of this exhibition at the National Museum of the American Indian of the Smithsonian Institution. The exhibition is the Great Inca Road, Engineering and Empire. You know, Cusco, as I said before, was the center of this empire, and they have that they have this the 3D model of Cusco as the central part of the exhibition. And I invite you, this is our web page, the web page of our research group. There you have this publication, and you have other publications, not just about Cusco. You have my PhD dissertation, you have the other documents about Cusco, about Tarragona, about other topics, and there are, you can download them for free within charge. And we are about to publish, this is our last publication, Arquitectura y Urbanismo el Cusco Inca, is now ready to be published. So I invite you to visit our webpage, and I thank you so much for your attention. I am ready for your comments or questions, whatever you have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alejandro. It was really amazing, and it shows how rich and how, you know, you can spend years and years and years. You could never come to an end to understand and to be aware of the greatness of the Inca culture and all represented in this region. Yes, we have some questions in our chat that I put now to you. Let me see. Yes, Victor Benavides asked, I read that the cathedral was built using the stone of Sacsayhuaman. It is true? If so, what part of Sacsayhuaman shows that evidence?
Well, not just the cathedral, but for instance, the Church of San Ignacio, the Temple of Santo Domingo. A lot of colonial buildings were built with stones of different buildings, of Inca buildings. Sacsayhuaman was a quarry completely. Sacsayhuaman was dismantled, and the stone was used in the construction of the colonial city. Not just the cathedral, but a lot of buildings of the colonial times were built with the stones of different buildings of all around the Inca city. Yes, this is completely precise. Yeah.
Thank you. Then somebody, Blanca Garcia Puente, sorry, she asked if you could please just explain a bit more about the meaning of the significance of rocks again in the as a religious symbol.
Okay, of course. Rocks were part of the religiosity in Inca time, but not just in Inca time. In the Andes, every culture was linked with rocks, and specifically in the case of Incas, because Incas, when they arrived to Cusco Valley, according with the oral tradition, the works they accomplished with the people who were in that place of Cusco, they use the stones to legitimate the appropriation of the land, the appropriation of this part of the valley, because they said that those stones were their ancestors. So the role of the rocks is related with the appropriation of the land, but was related with the right of ownership they pretend to make clear in order to make the appropriation of the land in what we know now, like as the Valley of Cusco.
Thank you. Yes, Robin Mencken asked if you can send the address of the sites and the museum for museum. I don't really know which museum you relate to.
Yes, okay, it's the National Museum of the American Indian. So, okay, let me. Yes, of course, I can do that in the chat. I can put the. Of course, I can do that. If we can continue with other.
Yes. Well, there are many comments of our audience. Thank you very much for the insightful and the wonderful presentation. And there's the last question is from Carlos. He asks, are you going to create a website of the project as Tarraco 360 degrees?
Yes, this is what we were talking before the talk started. And yes, this is our. I'm sending you the American Indian site to the Inca Road. So yes, this is our aim. This is something that we really like. We are going to do that as soon as we complete the work in the whole valley. As I told you before, we have worked on the Ceremonial Center and Sacsayhuaman and some of the terraces in San Blas, but we have still some work to do in the flat part of the valley and at some parts of the hills near to Cusco today. So yes, this is something we really want to do as soon as we finish the complete model of the whole valley. Yes.
Yes, because actually it was great. It was presented here in Instituto Cervantes Leeds in Manchester in cooperation with the cultural cities of European cultural centers, and it was really impressive. I really recommend you very much for those who have not yet seen this reconstruction in 3D of Tarraco, Roman Tarraco. It was really great. So I think there are no more questions. Okay. I only have to thank you again for this wonderful presentation. Also to thank the Embassy of Peru in London for the great support, also for the sponsors, and of course to our audience for being there.